I first met Walter. I think it was Barney Lake, sorry, with the NCC, with the Tomlinsons had donated a property there, and it was a bit of a bio blitz, but I soon discovered that I was in the presence of somebody really special. And it was over the next few months and years, we got to know each other a bit more. And Walter came and gave a talk on Ontario wildflowers for the club at the library, and also helped out with another request that I had, and I referred them to Walter, and he stepped in and took care of that as well. So he's really a terrific asset to the community, and he lives just down the road from us, around the Welbeck Sawmill. And it's just great to have him with us. And he's also really respectful of what's out there. I know I've seen this in a few people where there's a reluctance to tell people about plants or take them out on outings, just because it's just going to increase the risk of damage or whatever that's going to harm those. But on the other side, getting to know them, if you can apply that adventure to learning what's out there and knowing what's important to safeguard, that's helpful too. So anyway, it's just been a great pleasure to reconnect with Walter. He's been sort of on our back burner to come back and do another talk for quite a while. I said, how about this season? I said, okay, let's do it. And he had the wildflowers, springtime wildflowers of the Smoky Mountains. And I've done bicycle trips in that area. And I myself have actually been in there in April and found little wildflowers up in the hills, and and there might even be some vernal pools and some certainly lots of rivers and water courses through the Smoky Mountains, where you can see all kinds of other things growing at that time. So it's really a lush habitat for wildflowers and birds. I found my first tufted titmouse down there, and wow, this is really interesting. So anyway, I'm just going to let Walter take it over, and thanks a lot.
So good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. For me, field botany, tromping around the wilds looking for wildflowers and plants is basically my intense hobby. I don't do it for a living. I'm not a professor, never went to university for it, but I've always loved nature, love exploring the wilds. I almost spend more time off trails than on trails. And so I've been down the Smoky Mountains a number of times, specifically to see spring wildflowers. So I'm just going to take us on an adventure in the Smokies just to appreciate the beautiful wildflowers there in the spring. So we'll just get going here. My wife says this is a self-portrait of me. She says that's her on the right and me on the left. So here we are in April up here in Ontario, languishing in the depths of winter still, even though it's mid-April. I mean, after all, spring started, quote unquote, officially a whole month ago, but where is it? So we're waiting here. Everything's dead still. There's nothing happening. Might even snow. This is like 23rd of April. All my photos are dated, so I can tell. So I don't have a fantastic memory after all. So you're up here in mid-April with a 13-hour drive straight south. You can jump into the Smoky Mountains where there are literally billions of wildflowers out at that time of year. So anywhere from about the 10th on in April, it's like this. So it's a fantastic place to go and gives you a nice good dose of spring until you have to come back where it's still blah up here. So that's only a 13-hour drive if you drive like I do, down on the border of Tennessee and North Carolina. So it's a wonderful place to go. I'll be showing you lots of pictures and talk about it and stuff. So it's just an informal talk. I don't have a script. We're just going to ramble down to the Smokies. No, it's been a few years since I've been down there because of COVID, and also been exceptionally busy with other things. So I don't remember all the species names, but I cheated and I got the names up in the upper left there. So this is a white Clintonia. It's very much related to the yellow Clintonia we have here, except it's white and beautiful speckled petals. And there's another picture of it. The leaves look the same. So they're like orchid Fulgia leaves. You see the leaves. Orchid? No, it's not an orchid. So fire pink. So all of these are wildflowers that grow natively down there. I should say also that the neat thing about Smokies is a lot of the species that are down there are up here as well, but there's enough new ones down there to keep you busy trying to learn new stuff. So it's a nice blend. Of course, we don't have fire pinks up here, not that I know of. Never seen it anyways. Spring avens, tiny little flowers, early spring. We do have these in Ontario, perhaps more in the south. Beautiful, delicate little avens. Grow along damp areas, sometimes along creeks. This is a weird one. This is a vine called Dutchman's pipe because of the shape of the flower. That's the flower. You usually don't see the flowers because this vine climbs trees, and usually it doesn't flower until like way up in the canopy of the tree, is like 100 feet up or something. So you got to find a fallen one or an unusual one or somewhere where you can look down on one. There's the leaves growing up over a rock. And the young ones don't flower, so you don't get a break by seeing these kind flower. You got to find the old ones, the mature ones, and they flower. That's a pretty cool flower. I doubt very much it's in Ontario. This is dwarf ginseng. It is in southern Ontario, although I did see it in Grey County once. It's related to, I don't know if it's botanically related to the quote unquote real ginseng. Some people have claimed to me it has the same properties, but I doubt it. Real ginseng has become extremely rare because it's gotten dug up by people who want its medicinal properties. Dwarf larkspur. I only saw that in one place. Beautiful flower, beautiful bright color. But you know, I'm showing you all these pictures like they really are everywhere. It's not like I had to go 3 miles to find this and then there's nothing for 2 more miles or something. It's just plastered with wildflowers down there. Like that, for example. That's Carolina Spring Beauty. Do have that here. There's 2 species of Spring Beauty in Ontario. There's a closer picture. And interspersed in these pictures of wildflowers, I'm going to show you some of the trails. This is a trail. I believe this is Baxter Creek Trail. And you can see the spots of white all over. Those are all wildflowers. It's a really excellent place to go birding as well. But I'm just focused on wildflowers when I'm there. Carrying a camera and binoculars a bit much. I wouldn't get anywhere. As you can sort of see from this trail, most of the trails in the Smokies are either old roads or old cart tracks, and they go gradually uphill from the creek bottoms or the river bottoms. And so you can go uphill for like 4 hours till you reach the top of the ridge. And then when you're exhausted and it's time to go back, it's an easy walk downhill all the way back. So it's really nice that way. And the trails aren't really steep. Not, you know, there are steep ones, of course, but most of them are just nice, gradual uphill walks like this with lots to look at along the way. This is called Fairy Wand. There's something similar in Ontario, can't remember its name. Closer picture, full bloom, beautiful. And this in the Smokies, it's almost like you don't know where to stop because there's so much to see. So you, fortunately, along the roads, there's a lot of places to pull off and then just go walking around. A lot of hiking trails, probably, I don't know, in the Smoky Mountains National Park, there's probably 50 or 70 hiking trails, maybe. I don't know how many, a lot. This is called buffalo nut. It's actually a parasitic shrub. I don't know what it's parasitic on. So I should say I learned a lot of what I know. Every year there is a wildflower pilgrimage to the Smoky Mountains. So it's 4 days of wildflower walks, and they have about 200 walks over the 4 days, and hundreds of people attend from all over the US and up into Canada. So it's a great way to learn about all these plants and where to find them and what are the best trails and so on. So that's how I learned that this is parasitic. So I attended the pilgrimage. The first year I went down, and then after that, I just did my own thing each year. What some people would call a boring little flower. This green something or other, easily overlooked. Kind of neat though. Oh, another picture. And this is called yellow root. It's another shrub. So those flowers, those are the flowers in the middle there. Tiny little starry looking things. I only saw this in one spot. Being farther south, there's a lot more species down there than there are up here. So there's a lot more to learn, a lot more to try and remember as well. I don't know if I have another picture of that. Nope, just that one. And creeping bluets. There's several species of bluets. These are tiny little ones, only about a couple inches tall. They like growing along rivers. There's lots of rivers there, lots of creeks. These grow right along the edge of the river. Closer view. Tiny little things. Oh, there's a nice patch of them. And this is a blue cohosh, and many people don't know there's actually 2 species of it. This is the Thalictroides, which is the more southerly one, generally speaking, and we have Giganteum, which is a more northerly one. I'm pretty sure that's right, although I could get them mixed up even now. The one we have up here is a lot more purple, not as greenish. They're sometimes tough to tell apart, and if you're on a field botany outing, there could be arguments. And there's lots of little waterfalls all along the trails. And John mentioned that I don't like to reveal places where things are, because things have gotten invaded by hordes of people, especially over the last few years. So I'm pretty tight on showing people where things are. But the Smoky Mountains, there's room for a lot of people there. It's a big, huge park. You can go hiking on these trails for days and hardly see anybody, even this time of year when there's people all over the place, botany people looking for wildflowers and stuff, and photographers and so on. But you can go hiking on a trail and maybe see 5 people all morning or all afternoon or whatever. So it's no big deal to tell you all about this area. This is perfoliate bellwort. You're probably familiar with got the English name, grandiflorum, the bellwort that's up here. And a lot of people, when they see the bellwort that's up here, they think it's perfoliate because the stems go through the leaves, but it's not. I don't know if you can see it, but the inside of the petals have hundreds of little bumps on them, and that's how you can tell it's perfoliate. But it's unlikely you'll find it up here. It's here and there, more in the south. And this is another bellwort called sessile-leaved, also known as wild oats. Don't know why. It's I find this along the edges of trails and gravelly places. Delicate, beautiful little flower, only a few inches tall. There's another picture. Find it at different elevations as well. Another bluet. This is phlox. Sorry, this is creeping blue phlox. We have phlox up here, or in Ontario, I mean, by up here. And this is glade phlox. And this is the phlox you saw in the first picture I showed you of the Smokies, that just covers glades. And, down there, a glade, it really does mean a glade. It's a beautiful little area, sort of off to the side somewhere, filled with sunlight and flowers, sort of stereotypical glade that you'd think of. And that it does invoke that. This individual flowers of glade phlox with some violet leaves, unknown fern. Another trail. There's a lot of magnolias down there, and some trails are just 100% magnolias, nothing else. They tend to shade out everything else. And they're not blooming quite yet. They bloom, I think, in May or later. I haven't been there that late, so I'm not sure. But again, notice it's like a road, an old road that gradually goes upward. This is fringed phacelia. There's several species of phacelia there. This is an annual as opposed to a perennial. And sometimes you just find whole hillsides just filled with these white flowers, just covering them. That's the same thing. And again, if you're a photographer and you go to the Smokies, don't bring your spouse. They won't like waiting around for you all the time, because you just can't get enough pictures of some of these. They're so beautiful. And this is purple phacelia, very closely resembles wild geranium, which is down there as well. And you go down there in mid-April up here, there's snowing down there. It could be, it's US, so we have to use Fahrenheit. It could be 80 degrees. You could actually build up a sweat and want to take your shirt off if you're allowed to. Purple phacelia. And Miami mist, which is another phacelia. I think there's records of Miami mist being found in Ontario, but I've never seen it anywhere. And Miami mist again. Lots of waterfalls, lots of fast flowing creeks. Go for a dip in them anywhere you want to. Yellow lady slipper. Now, up here, yellow lady slippers, they're like sometimes so common, like dandelions along the side of the highway. But down there, this is one of those hush hush plants. You don't tell anybody where it is. It's secret because they're incredibly rare down there. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. And pink lady slippers are not considered really rare down there, but they're considered pretty special. Those are just ones in bud coming out of a nice bed of moss. It's another plant you can't get too many photos of. I love these pink lady slippers. I love all orchids, but I guess I like this one a lot. Oh, another one. And this is one of those plants that you not supposed to say the common name anymore, squaw root. People start calling it bear corn. It's a very interesting plant. It's parasitic on something. And when it deteriorates, it turns black and almost looks like bear scat. I don't know if that's why they call it bear corn, but sometimes I've also seen it called cancer root. It's a very interesting plant. It's common enough up here. So there's, a good example of something that's up here that's down there. So you don't have to learn too much. And squirrel corn, so called because the roots have tubers which closely resemble kernels of corn. And this species also closely resembles Dutchman's breeches. Nice. It's nice just to sit by these rivers and maybe have your lunch beside them. Cool your feet down in the water. Wild ginger. Another one that's very common up here. Growing on a rock, on a crack. And the wild ginger flower. They say this is pollinated by ants. I haven't spent enough time watching one to know. And then there's relatives of wild ginger, which we don't have up here. And this is called little brown jugs. And there's actually several species of it that, as far as I can tell, the only way you can tell them apart is by the size of the opening in the flower. And sometimes they're really tiny. So it's really interesting how and the leaves are sort of vaguely the same. The flowers cluster around on the ground, tiny openings, so some tiny insect pollinates them. Interesting name, little brown jugs. Well, I guess they are kind of like jugs. And this is flowers of a shrub called dog hobble. And it's called dog hobble because the branches curve down and often grows on hillsides, and the branches curve down, pointing downhill. And so dogs, it's almost impossible for dogs to jump through it. So it's called dog hobble. I like to call it dog bog. Bogs them right down. Beautiful flowers, like sort of like leather leaf flowers or wintergreen type of thing. So it's quite common down there. Evergreen leaves. And of course, there's 2 or 3 other species that are very similar. So you sort of sometimes have to do what I call statistical plant ID. So if it looks like this, let's just call it dog hobble. It's like seeing a gull. Oh, look, a ring-billed gull. You could be right more times than not. And of course, if people around you don't know any better, well, you look expert. Oh, another picture of the flowers. Pretty little things. You see the stem arching up in the background. And this is a vine called cross vine. If I recall correctly, it's called cross vine because the configuration of the leaves is like a cross. Again, this thing usually blooms way up there somewhere. So you have to sort of search around, find a tree or a branch that's fallen down and taken it with it so that the flowers are at eye level. But usually you're photographing them up there, if at all. Or you need a flash, which is what I used here. Pretty spectacular flowers. There it is up in the tree. The leaves don't show that cross shape very often. So it's one of those odd names. There's vines all over there, including poison ivy. Lots of poison ivy all over the place in certain places. You just have to be aware. And speaking of hazards, there's copperhead rattlesnakes too. And I've seen them once. Copperhead rattlesnakes. Yeah, I don't have any pictures. Well, and that's a cross vine flower bud. Really weird looking. There's a glade full of glade phlox. And this is in a very special area of Smoky Mountains, which I sometimes hesitate to tell people about. It's the White Oak Sinks. There's only one trail in, and I have a picture of the waterfall later. There's a waterfall that falls into it, and it finds its way out underground because there's no exit. It's a depression, so you can go in, down, but you have to climb up, back out to get out. So it's very deceiving going there because you hike down, 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 down to get there, and oh, that was a nice, easy hike. And then you remember you have to go back up that really steep trail you came down to get out of there. So it's sometimes really exhausting getting back out of there, but it's a wonderful little place to go to. I think they've had to restrict numbers of people go in there or something because it's too well known. So just forget I just said all that, okay? This is most likely plantain-leaved sedge, although sedges being sedges, there could be 57 other species that look exactly like this, who knows? But it looks like plantain-leaved sedge, and that's one that's familiar to a lot of us in our rambles. And I labeled this great chickweed, but after 2 or 3 years of people saying that's what it is, I did some research, and it's probably not great chickweed. It's probably Tennessee chickweed, but we're not going to worry about the differences right now, partly because I don't remember, partly because they're probably one of those subtle things, you know. And Christmas fern, which we're very familiar with here. and tiny Christmas ferns. And ebony spleenwort, which we do have up here too. Beautiful black stem. Notice I don't use a lot of botanical terms. I don't want to confuse people. And mitrewort, which we know of up here. Some people call it bishop's cap. Tiny, tiny little flower. Very hard to photograph because it's so small. Delicate little plants. I love seeing those. There's a closely related one called naked mitrewort, which is even more delicate, not as common, harder to find, tinier. But there they are, they grow in groups. They like dampish soils. And sometimes you hit upon, oh, no, it's further along. There's a nice picture of them further along, which I'll point out when we get there. These aren't carefully sorted in orders. I just wanted to go on an exploration. That's the point here. These are flowers of early meadow rue, dangling in the wind. If you ever tried to photograph them, you know how challenging it is. The tiniest breath of wind starts these things vibrating. They're very beautiful. But yeah, we have early meadow rue up here. And striped maple. So it's amazing the range of some of these plants. They're all the way down Tennessee, and striped maple goes way up north in Ontario. Don't always see the flowers of it though. And pawpaw, southern Ontario species, and goes down into the US. It makes the fruit are edible, apparently quite tasty. Weird flowers, they always point down. It's really hard to photograph them because they're so dark. It's hard to get the right exposure. Bowman's root. This is just down there, not up here. Flower, the petals are kind of weird, just sort of whichever way they want to be. They're all like that. There's no symmetrical ones. They're just sort of wherever they feel like being. Like that. And deerberry. I was going to say dewberry. Deerberry. So there's various deer, dew, blueberry, etc. You know, huckleberry species all over the place. They're tough to tell apart. Took me quite a while to figure out that this was deerberry. At the end, I'll show you the books I use. This is along a trail up along a mountain ridge, a dry area. Beautiful rivers there. Lots of them. They always have a good flow in the spring. Of course, one spring I was down there, tornadoes came through. So that's the season for that, for these storms down mid-April. I didn't actually get hit by tornadoes, but there were roads closed because of downed trees and stuff. So you could run into some interesting weather. These are very early violets. This is early round-leaved violet. Don't have this in Ontario. It blooms really early. So this one was the 17th of April, but if you're up in higher elevations, that's like going back in time in terms of spring. Oh, there's a bunch of different violets down there. This is bird's foot violet because of the shape of the leaves, which you see them in the background, but the flower is different than a lot of other violets. These, what's this one? Oh, this is bird's foot again, so it has variations. And again, you can see the leaves in the background. And Canada violet, which I'm sure most of you know about. It's very common up here. And halberd-leaved violet, which is not the yellow violet we have here. I guess because the leaf is shaped halberdishly. But the flowers look just like the yellow violet we have here. And that's another one of that. and long-spurred violet, which you may have seen up here. Violets are very photogenic when there's a dew or after a rain. And cream violet or pale violet, same one. Not sure if it's up in, it might be up in the Bruce. I can't remember if I've seen it there, but it's definitely in Ontario. It's like a completely white violet and a little bit off-white. Oh, one more violet, I think. Palmate violet. Lots of violets there. Doesn't make you just want to go in there and sit down. Yeah. And this is downy rattlesnake plantain, which is an orchid. It's uncommon in Ontario. I used to own a property, 50-acre property, which had the only population of this known for Grey County. 1,500 plants, healthy, blooming every year. So I know the new owner, so I usually go check that population every year to see how it's doing. But very uncommon of the rattlesnake plantains, orchids. But there's tons of it down in the Smokies. Rattlesnake fern, quite common up here. Pretty neat with its fertile branches sticking up. And this is Robin's plantain, which, notice, people love to hate common names. And this is one of the reasons why, completely different species, completely different, having the same common name, plantain. But common names have their use. It's not another language for most of us. And it's easier to remember Robin's plantain than for some of us, for me anyways, rather than some long name with many syllables in another language. I don't do other languages. Just can't. So Robin's plantain is in the aster family. It looks like an aster or a fleabane. And this is solitary pussy toes. It's got one flower head. Unlike the pussy toes we have up here, they got bunches of flower heads on one stem. This just has one flower head on a stem. And like the other pussy toes you have up here, it grows in gravelly, dryish areas. Another picture. Very easy to ID because there's no other pussy toes that are like this. Mountain laurel. These are the flower buds about to open. And there they are. So these stamens that are inside are spring-loaded. So when an insect comes in, the stamen breaks free and bashes on the insect, giving it some of the pollen. I don't know how they reload. Maybe they do or don't. I don't know, but that's what they do. Oh, yeah, another picture. Yeah. So when is this? This is April 28th. So yeah, you have to go down a little bit later to see it in bloom. One time I went down there for 2 weeks. Usually just go down for a week. Went down for 2 weeks and I'd work in the morning and then go out hiking the rest of the day. Or if it rained, I'd just work all day and then the next day I'd go out all day. So that way I could still pay attention to my business, but still be in a nice area and take off anytime. There's a very uncommon trillium lives up this valley here, which we'll see in a bit. Sometimes there's little bridges across the creeks and sometimes you just wade through them. This is an old road. Yeah, there's some ruins up this trail. And of course, showy orchis. We have, relatively speaking, a fair bit of this up in Grey Bruce, especially Grey County. There's lots of it down there. That's an orchid. And sometimes it's pure white. There's one trail in particular, it's an old road in the Smokies. There's lots of this all along. It's one of, again, one of those you can't get enough pictures of it. Yellow star grass. Spectacular little plant. It's sort of like in name, it's sort of like the blue-eyed grass. It's called a grass, but it's not a grass because the leaves are very thin and narrow. So yellow star grass. With a tiny, tiny insect in it. What a different world it must be to be that insect. Where this flower is huge. I sometimes wonder what it's like. Trees just starting to get their leaves up the mountains. And if you get tired from hiking or whatever, or it's pouring rain, you go for a drive up over the mountains or on some of the mountain roads around the area. If you need a break from hiking. Okay, John, are we about halfway? Okay, good. There's trillions of trilliums in the Smokies. And I know trilliums are halfway here. So this is Gatesby's trillium. The petals are almost parallel, always droops down, and it's this beautiful white color. I know a certain area, as I look at these, pretty nice actually, because as I look at each picture, I'm remembering where I was when I saw it. So I think I'll go there now. Bye. It's a national park. Yep. Huge area, and it's free. There's no charge for using it, and there's tons of places to park, and it can absorb a lot of people. And there's 2 visitor centers, and so if you go there, you get a map, shows all the trails, and just follow the map. It's pretty easy. Like I said, they all go uphill from the highway, generally speaking, and then you go downhill when you're done. The trails are well marked. There's not like a maze of trails where you have to figure out where to go. If there are any junctions, it's well signed. So it's a well-used park, but it's not crowded, except along the highways. Lots of motorcycles go there. So you'll often hear a roar of motorcycles, 20 or 30 of them go by. And on the south end of the Smoky Mountains National Park, there's a very twisty section of highway called the Dragon's Tail. And motorcycles come from all over the country to ride on it because it's all twisty. And there's a lot of Mini Coopers and those kind of cars too, like tearing along the curves because it's constant twisty. There's no straight sections at all. More Catesby's trillium. Tough to photograph because it's drooping down. So it's hard to get the light on it. And it fades to pink just like our white trilliums do. Oh, another boy, I really like this one. I didn't realize I had so many of this one. And this is bent trillium. I think we have a species in Ontario called bent trillium in the south. I've never seen it in Ontario, but if it's the same, again, common name sometimes, but if it's the same one, then yeah, it's in Ontario. Another just beautiful creek. That would be Ohio Buckeye leaves there in the upper leftish. Or there's another Buckeye there. I can't remember the name of it. It's either one of those. Painted trillium. Nice patch on a mossy rock. It's another one of those species where you got, 57 photos of it and you say, oh, I better take some more just in case. It's like eating candy or something. And this is southern nodding trillium. So we have nodding trillium in Ontario. It's different than this one. This is a southern nodding trillium. Notice this is an unusual one. It's a huge one. I remember this plant. It's got 4 petals. So some of us call that quadrillium. And it's 4 leaves as well. Very unusual. It's some sort of chromosome thing. You can get 4 sometimes. Very rare. I suppose it'd be the 4-leaf clover of the trillium world. I don't know if I've ever seen. Yeah, I've seen them somewhere, sometimes in Ontario. Another picture of it. Beautiful. And there's so many trillium species down there. It's sometimes get really tough to tell them apart. So you spend quite a bit of time poring over field guides trying to figure out which one is which sometimes. This is Vasey's trillium. So remember that picture of a trail going up a valley and there was a log bridge. That's where this is. It's not very common. Petals are quite wide. So I always feel really special when I find one. So this feels really, wow, look at that. Found one. Oh, another one. I guess I do like it. They're very cup shaped, these ones. They don't open flat. Yeah, see, like very cup shaped. Well, this is a bit more flat, but very curly. Oh, another one. Oh my goodness. Okay. Sometimes when I give wildflower talks, I joke at the beginning. I say I have about 200,000 digital photos, and tonight I'm going to show you all of them. So I guess I'm showing you all of the pictures of Vasey's trillium. Curly petals, weird. Now this is our same white trillium that we have up here. Grandiflorum. Again, it ages through pink. I try to be patient, but I can't help rolling my eyes when I'm out leading a botany walk and somebody tells me they found a new species of trillium and they show me these pink ones. No, be patient, Walter. Be patient. They don't know any better. It's just an old white trillium. That's what they do. And down there, this is my favorite, the yellow trilliums. They're amazing. They're all over the place. Spectacular. Apparently, there's a historical record of it being in Ontario, but it's apparently not really in Ontario anymore. So it's the trilliums that don't really open anymore. This is open. This is as open as it gets. And it's got these variegated leaves. Fun, whatever. Spectacular to photograph after a shower. And I never cheat. I never put rain on the plants or shine light on them or anything. But yeah, these yellow ones are amazing. And they're big too. It could be 2.5 feet high sometimes. Yeah, I love these yellow trilliums. So I'm not going to apologize for having lots of pictures of them. And then when they capture the sunlight like this, yeah. What do they say? What's the expression? Photographs to die for. Oh, another one. And then you get the difficult ones. So this is actually our red trillium, erectum, but it's got white petals. And it closely resembles another species I'm going to show you shortly. And telling them apart is really challenging sometimes. So, so this is the white form of the red trillium. And notice it's not drooping down, it's standing up above the leaves. Up here, the red trilliums are below the leaves, which is weird. So who knows, maybe it should be a separate species. Maybe those taxonomists haven't got a grant yet. And then this is sweet white trillium, very similar, but it's actually a separate species. And telling them apart is very challenging. I wouldn't be surprised if they interbreed, hybridize. These ones tend to be more cup-shaped. I don't know how many times I've read and reread the descriptions of each of these in the field guides trying to figure out which is which. And this is the sweet white one with very particularly plump petals. And sometimes it's got a lot narrower petals just to confuse you. As I sometimes say on botany outings, that sometimes you just have to walk away from the plant. Don't worry about what it is. Just beautiful and walk away. It's a trillium. And then these are the other sessile type trilliums. I think sessile is the right word. These are Sweet Betsy. So it's just like the yellow trillium, but it's red or variations of red. They're nowhere near as common. So you see what I'm saying? Trillions of trilliums. Lots of them everywhere. And just nice trees with leaves coming out. Sometimes there's nice breeze, leaves. Now this is a shrub called sweet shrub. And these are flowers, but when you touch them, they're all stiff and hard, so they're not soft like petals usually are. So maybe these aren't actually petals, and maybe the actual flower is buried inside. But people call these the flowers when you're down there. Sweet shrub, I think it's some part of it can be used to eat or something. I'm not sure. I don't remember. Another picture. Interesting though, incredible variety in wildflowers and nature and everything. This is rattlesnake weed. So it looks like similar to our hawkweeds. The leaves are very mottled like rattlesnake skin. And Smoky Mountains have been settled for years and years. Not anymore, but they were settled. And that's why there's all these roads up the valleys and along the ridges and so on. And there are old buildings here and there. This one's been preserved as a place for people to see some of the history. But if you need a break from botany, who needs a break from botany though? But if you're so weird as to need a break from botany, there's lots of history to explore, lots of it there. And there's books about it and everything. So yeah, lots of things to explore there. This is a wild stone crop. And in behind there's a sharp-lobed hepatica leaf. Anything in behind here? No. So yeah, beautiful starry flowers. We have a stone crop in Ontario, mossy stone crop with a yellow flower. This is wild geranium. So remember those phacelias we saw earlier? Looks very similar, but the leaves are very different than the phacelia leaves. And wild geranium is quite common up here. And another view of that, of another one. This is kind of picture as a photographer, you say, wow, because you get the light just perfect. It's you feel very fortunate when that happens. Oh, another one. And this is large leaf waterleaf. So up here we have Virginia waterleaf. And in the southern Ontario, we got a couple other species. I think this one's in Ontario, I'm not sure. But same family, same idea, mottled leaves. Supposed to look like waters on it, I guess. Virginia bluebells. We have northern bluebells up here. These are Virginia bluebells. There's an area of the Smokies called Cades Cove, which is a lot lower in elevation than the rest of it. And so there's other species there that you don't find in the rest of the Smokies. So in the Smokies, you can range over probably, I don't know, a couple thousand feet of elevation. So there's quite a bit different plants in those different elevations. Same thing, Virginia bluebells. Umbrella leaf. This is an interesting plant. Beautiful little flowers, likes growing in the water or in sort of calm areas of creeks. I know the site where it is. I can see it in my mind right now. The leaves are sort of like giant mayapple leaves. And this is why you call it umbrella leaf. I didn't want to pick it and put it over my head, you see. Nice little picture of light coming through and the flowers again. I'm just going back and forth here. I don't have 56 pictures of it. Don't worry. And why not have some fun with the plants, eh? And these white flowers in behind me, that's Brook saxifrage. We're going to see that later on. It's edible, or brook lettuce, I think they call it too. This is the trail along which the umbrella leaf can be found further up. And they keep these trails clear. They're pretty good at keeping them clear. They must go through a lot of work in the spring to open them up after each winter. Yeah, there it is. Brook saxifrage or brook lettuce. So apparently very edible, helped the settlers stay alive when there were people living in the Smokies. So it grows right in the creeks. So you kind of wonder why it doesn't get washed away in the spring melt. Oh, that's still brook saxifrage. Yeah, close up of the flower. Oh, another one. It's probably the leaves that are edible, like lettuce, probably. Shooting stars. I wonder, I don't know if people have these in their garden, or might be thinking of snowdrops up here, but these are shooting stars, very different, different species altogether. And this is a neat flower. It's called silver bells, but it's in a tree. It's like a full-size tree. And these flowers are way up there in the branches. And when the flowers are done, you get these little spent silver bell flower shells all over the trails. So it's, again, not easy to get a picture of them sometimes. So that's pretty neat. And pretty nice name, silver bells. It invokes all kinds of images. There's it, closer. So not many tree flowers are showy like that. There's it again. Beautiful. The leaves are just coming out. Like most tree flowers, they come out before the leaves. Because most tree flowers are wind pollinated, but obviously these are not because they're showy. And up here we have, in the Bruce, we have the dwarf lake iris. Well, down there, there's dwarf crested iris. Different species, but to the untrained eye would look identical. I don't know the differences because I don't need to, because one's up here and one's down there. So it doesn't matter, right? But it's, oh, that's the next one. So this is dwarf crested iris, different species, but there, could be beds of them, like 1 or 2 or 300 or 1,000 plants. You get that up here sometimes. There's places on the Bruce where there's tens of thousands of them, just like grass. No, I'm not going to tell you where. This is southern blue flag iris. And I've seen recent reports. This has been allegedly reported up in Ontario, up in Grey County and Long Lake Huron. So, but the differences to me seem pretty subtle from our northern blue flag. So I'm not sure. So southern blue flag iris. And again, sometimes you can do botany by where you find the plant. So just like I said, a dwarf crested iris, if you're down in the Smokies, that's what it is. And if you're up here, it's the dwarf lake iris. So here, you're down in the Smokies, and this is a fairly tall iris. It's probably southern blue flag iris. And there's not a huge number of iris species down there. Oh, and this is back to the dwarf crested iris. So if you examine the petals, they do look different than the dwarf lake iris up here. And this is why it's called the Smokies. It's very typical smoky-ish aspect to the distant atmosphere. Easy to get lost in this scenery. And wood sorrel, this is large yellow wood sorrel. I love the border around the edge of the leaf. And violet wood sorrel. Beautiful color. I don't know. Everything is edible once. Yellow mandarin, we got that up here. Beautiful yellow flowers hanging down. I love these. I love coming upon it. Now this is Porter Creek Trail, which is an old road, which is a very popular hiking because it goes up to some beautiful waterfalls, and a lot of people go up here. But it's not crammed or crowded, partly because the parking is severely limited, not on purpose, just plain isn't anywhere to park. And you do have to drive to these places. Well, you could walk, but it'd take you a long time. And there's lots of wildflowers along here. Well, even though they don't pop out to the eye right now, but there's lots of them along the trail. Wood vetch. Oh, thought there was another one of that. And wood betony. We definitely have that up here. And it's funny, certain of these plants I've only found in certain areas, like certain patches along one trail or something, nowhere else. And this is one. Fascinating flower shape. And sometimes this varies from yellow to green to purple or, other colors. And this is interesting fern. It's called resurrection fern. And it's down in the southern US. It can completely dry out to crispy dry. And then when it rains, it rejuvenates and becomes, well, it didn't die, but you could say it becomes alive again, hence the name. Pretty amazing. So here these are sort of halfway to being completely dry. But when it rains, these will just uncurl and be fresh and alive again. Great name for it, resurrection fern. Sort of resembles what we have up here called polypody. There is polypody down there, but it's Appalachian polypody as opposed to the one we have here. Scorpion grass, not a grass. Looks like almost like a forget-me-not type of flower, that type of thing. Scorpion grass, tiny little flowers, by the way, tiny, tiny. Interesting to photograph. And this is false Solomon seal. We have that here. They call it, down in the US, they call it Solomon's plume, which is a nice name for it. So again, I sort of want to highlight, there's a lot of species down there that you're familiar with because they're up here, but then a lot of new stuff too. So it's very good for botanizing, field botany. Hairy Solomon seal, quite common here. There is a smooth Solomon seal and a hairy Solomon seal. And the hairy ones, the smooth one's not very common at all. The hairy one has ultra fine hairs on the bottom of the leaves. That's how you can tell. They're so fine that sometimes you're almost tempted to call it smooth Solomon seal. So you have to look very closely. I think there's a difference in the number of flowers that hang down too. Can't remember. Another trail. They say it's nice grade, easy walk. It's more of a stroll. So in the Wildflower Pilgrimage, they have, I said there's about 200 walks over 4 days. Some of those walks are strolls and some of them are hike-a-thons. So if you go, sort of look at the distance and the time they expect to take. Some of them, they shouldn't be called botany hikes at all. There's no way you can. In fact, I knew somebody who took one of them and they thought it'd be really wonderful going up in the mountains. But then at the end, they said, man, we're exhausted. We're just speed hiking the whole day. Appalachian blackberry. Oh, sorry, southern blackberry. Different than the blackberries we have here. Rue anemone. small, delicate little plants. We have those up here, and wood anemone too. I don't know if it's this far north. So this is rue anemone. One of the more delicate spring wildflowers. And this is wood anemone. The leaves are different. See the leaves there as opposed to those kind. See, these ones are roundy. These ones, oops, these are pointy, jaggedy. How do you like my use of botanical terms? And this is anemone we do not have up here. Sorry, it's a rue, but rues I think are anemones. Cliff meadow rue. Very stameny flower. I don't know if it even has any petals. Beautiful little thing. I was pretty thrilled when I found this. Another nice little waterfall. There's lots of little, like I said, there's lots of these little waterfalls and creeks all over the place. Anise root. So up here we have anise root and sweet cicely, and we do down there as well. And I can never remember the sure way to tell them apart. Some people just say, well, anise root's smooth and sweet cicely's not, but then I've seen the reverse to be true. But then I don't remember from one year to the next what the real difference is. Something to do with the stamens. Sweet cicely, this is sweet cicely. And sometimes other people or beings are out doing field botany as well. So I've seen bears down there twice. Usually it's the rear end of the bear you see as it runs away from you. And this is a rat snake, black rat snake. And I only know that because somebody nearby told me. And flowering dogwood. It's in trouble. There's a fungus that attacks it. And just including this because when people see these white bracts, they say flowering dogwood is flowering, but no, those are just the bracts. The actual flowers are inside. And those bracts come out and show white long before those greenish flowers in the middle open. So they're not really flowering when you see the big white bracts, the showy bracts. Perhaps a technicality, but nevertheless. This is a narrow-leaved glade fern. We have that up here. There's some of it in Kinghurst. Beautiful, only once divided fern. It's a nice smooth fern, not all lacy. So you remember the spring avens earlier in this presentation? Well, maybe don't, doesn't matter. It was growing right here as well, right along this creek. Flame azalea. So these don't come out until later in April. This is April 25th, which, you know, only a few of them are out. It'd be probably end of April when they just go crazy and explode into colorful bloom. There's lots of azaleas there. That's where they're native. So it's, you know, you could stay down there for a couple months and not run out of things to see. Oops, too fast, sorry. Crazy stamens. That's a botanical term too. And nice waterfalls. Foam flower with a white butterfly of some sort. Lots of foam flower down there, like stampish soils. You're probably familiar with it up here more. I like foam flower. Just showing the leaves. The leaves sort of resemble mitrewort, so sometimes at first glance you might think It's the other one. But if the flowers are out, there's no mistaking which is which. And then here's a sedge, Fraser's sedge, which has actually white flowers. So it's really quite spectacular. We don't get anything like that up in Terrell. They all have boring green flowers like that. It's amazing. It's huge too. So these leaves are probably a couple feet long, or a foot to 2 feet, something like that. But it sure is spectacular. You know, who would have thought there's a pretty sedge around? Yeah. There's just boring and green and look like grass, and I can't possibly identify them because they're sedges. But this one's easy. This is, do you remember I mentioned earlier White Oak Sinks, that depression where you have to, you hike down and you have to climb up out of, this is the creek that falls into it and it leaves through the underground caverns. Not caverns, that's a misnomer, underground channels. You know, you can't go walk through them or anything. This is a Galax, Galax. Don't have that up here. Grows in the mountains all through the mid-south. Round evergreen, I think they're evergreen leaves. And greenbrier flower. Don't see the flower very often, probably because it's overshadowed by the leaves and it's so tiny. And Indian cucumber root, not in bloom yet. And the roots really are edible, but they're too tiny to make it worthwhile. So don't go collecting them. There's not a lot of this around anyways. Indian strawberry, since we're on the Indian theme. I think this, I might be wrong, but this might be a non-native. So it's an ironic name, isn't it? I've been out with botanists who hate this plant, so it's probably not native. Oh, same thing, just a different view. That's not the leaf on the top, but it is the leaf on the bottom. That top leaf looks like zigzag goldenrod. And Jack in the Pulpits, which might be Jill's. So there's lots of them down there. That's a pretty ubiquitous species all over the place. And this is a fallen tree that decayed enough to let all these plants grow on it. So when I saw this, I nicknamed it Botany Stairway to Heaven. I know exactly where it is if you want me to take you there. It's pretty stupendous, eh? Oh, another view. Lots of foam flower. Lots of everything. Some parts of the landscape down there are almost like jungles. A red eft, non-botany. Oh, perhaps I jumped too quick there. I did not overturn logs to find it. It's just hanging out there. Well, so it looks like about, looks like maybe 3-4 inches, maybe, judging from what's around. Let's see. Red eft, E-F-T. It's a salamander. I don't know a lot about salamanders, but that's pretty obvious. There's not many things that look like that. Smooth rock cress. I believe, I never did figure out whether these are the seed pods or just a weird kind of flower with maybe that tiny flower at the end of each tube, but I suspect these are seed pods. I only question it because I've seen so much variation in things with a nice background of poison ivy and a couple of yellow trilliums back there. And black snake root, long fruited black snake root. But if you can tell the difference between the various snake roots, you are a hyperbotanist super nerd. So we have black snake root up here. Another nice little creek, or as my father would call it, a crick. Would have called it, yeah. Trailing arbutus. Some places there's a lot of it. I know it's generally regarded as not very common in Ontario, but I seem to find it. But down there, there's big patches of it here and there. Still in bloom. So this was mid-April, April 17th, still in bloom, but again, higher elevations. So if you go up elevation, you hike up a trail, up all morning, you're actually going sort of, in terms of spring, you're going back in time. And toothwort. Now we have toothwort here, 2 species. This is looks like the common one we have here, but it's actually not. It's 2-leaved toothwort. And for quite a while, because I didn't read the books closely enough, I thought it was the same species until I spent the time and figured out it was actually a different species. Notice the pair of leaves just below the flowers. I don't think ours have that. I can't remember. And umbrella magnolia. So a tree with a tree flower. And the same thing, well, different one, but wide open, same species. Umbrella magnolia. A maidenhair fern. Lots of it down there. Again, you got lots down there that's familiar. And wider open. Looks like sweet Cicely below it. Mountain saxifrage. So another saxifrage. Again, I'm thinking of where I saw this. I know where I saw it. Same thing, mountain saxifrage, growing in amongst a whole bunch of other stuff. Let's look at how many species are in that tiny little area. You know, if you go down the Smokies and you like botany and you get bored, you have a real problem. One-flowered cancer root with a bloodroot leaf behind it. We have that here, both of them. Orange, this is, I probably include this because it's the weirdest plant name I know. Orange fruited horse gentian. I guess it does have orange fruit though. The leaves sort of almost join along the stem. Sort of see the yellow pistil, I think, sticking out the end of the flowers. Pretty weird plant. I have to say, this is not my favorite, my most unusual plant name that my favorite. My favorite one is bastard toadflax. More gladey stuff. Sunshiny glade, calm, beautiful spring day. The nice thing about down there is hardly anybody goes off the trails. People behave themselves pretty well. And this is a meadow parsnip, smooth meadow parsnip. It can be either yellow or purpley like this. A little member of the parsnip family, of course. But this is beautiful. You don't see these purple variety very often. Mostly it's the yellow ones. And pennywort. A lot of plants are penny this and penny that. This is pennywort. And wild comfrey. Now, I'm not sure, I don't recall whether this is comfrey that's gotten wild or it's another species called wild comfrey. I suspect it's the second. Because I think comfrey that's gone wild has very different flowers, I think. Anyways. And wild yam root. We do have that in Ontario. It's sort of a viney thing. Interesting / uninteresting flowers, greenish flowers. And this is there's, see the size of the flowers. So that's this. I like that plant. I like the veins on the leaves. I use a 100mm macro lens. And for most of these pictures, I'm guessing I probably used a Canon 5D, which is a full frame sensor. So you get more pixels to work with, so you can crop in more. So you can effectively magnify more once you crop it in. And this is almost the end. This is a lovely waterfall. One of many, as you have seen, with magnolias around. So I just copied this from the website. If you want to go down there, this is when the wildflower pilgrimage is this year, April 26 to 29. That's actually kind of late. I'm surprised it's that late. It's usually a week before then. If you are inclined to go, register now because the spots fill up really quick. And so do the hotels. It's a popular event. And that time of year, field botany people and just nature people love to go to the Smokies. So if you just look up wildflower pilgrimage, you'll get there. There's wildflower pilgrimages elsewhere. There's one in West Virginia, and I think there's others, but this is sort of like the one. And the Botanical Society of America has a outing each year, and this year it's in North Carolina, and they schedule it so it's just the week before this. They were going to come up here for the last 2 years, but it kept getting canceled because of COVID. Unfortunately, I was going to be leading their outings for them. And if you go down there, these are the 2 wildflower books that are must-gets. Wildflowers of Tennessee by Jack Carman, and the Lone Pine book, Wildflowers of Tennessee, etc. So these are the ones that are must-haves to ID stuff. They're comprehensive enough, but they don't go overboard. So it really helps you to know them. If you don't have time to make a note of these right now and you want to, you can always reach me through the Nature Club, Naturals Club, Own Sound. Contact somebody, they'll give you my contact info, or look me up on the internet. I'm not hard to find. Just look up Walter Muma. You'll find one of my websites. Most of you know that I'm the person behind Ontario Wildflowers and other websites like that. So if you go through them, find the link at the bottom to Wildwood Canada, and that's my business site, and you can email me through there and get more information. If you really want to go down there, I can tell you the best trails to go, and I can send you these names of these books. If you're really interested in going, I'm happy to help you out. And that's it. Are there any questions or comments? Oh, thank you. Thank you. Somebody, for the benefit of those online, somebody likes my pictures. Were the glades fragrant? Yes. Yeah, it was amazing. And sunshine, warm day, not much breeze, and the smell of wildflowers wafting through the air. It's idyllic. It's absolutely, I don't know the words for it. Yeah. That's the reason why I like to go there every year, but I haven't been for a little while. Yep. Nothing. Like, it's too early. There's not much, like, I don't recall. I'm trying to remember if I was ever annoyed by bugs down there, and I don't recall being so. Nothing like up here anyways, if there are. So like I said, I don't recall them bugging me, so to speak. Yeah. Yeah. Hotel, there's a lot. So Smoky Mountains is a hot tourist spot, not because of the national park, but the Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge and the towns on the south are tourist traps, major tourist traps. There's tourist junk, mile after mile after mile of tourist traps. So there's tons of hotels. Like there's all kinds of shows and gambling places and you name it, it's their Dolly Parton world, everything. It's just lined with it. So there's tons of restaurants and lots of places to stay, lots of places to waste your time and money if you don't like botany. But there's lots of hotels. But again, if you're going that time of year, you should probably book, because then the tourist season fires up in the summer, but there's already tourists there. But again, all the botanists descend on there. Yeah, you can camp. There's places to camp in the national park. Again, you got to reserve well in advance. And there's even cabins you can reserve. But there are campgrounds there, but not vast ones with 1,000 spaces or anything. But yeah, there's definitely campgrounds. Yep. Yeah. And so the campgrounds cost money, of course, but again, the entrance to the park, there is no entry fee whatsoever. And there's a main highway goes through the middle of it and other roads. And, they're roads that connect communities. So there's no toll roads, nothing, no fees at all for the park. Yeah. I would say it's not old growth, because most of the Smokies has been pretty intensely lived in historical times, like not right now, but like all those roads were roads to get lumber or lead to settlements and so on, all those trails. So there's trails up almost every valley. So it's been pretty intensively exploited by humans over time. So I would guess there's very little, if any, old growth forest left. There are like some spots here and there you have to hike a long ways to get to places that have massive trees and stuff. I think the Ramsey Falls Trail is one of those. I've never been on it, but most of it is second, third, whatever growth for sure. Yeah, it's definitely very impacted by people. Yep.
Yeah, a couple of questions from over Zoom.
Okay.
Graham, I think you answered this a little bit, but Graham asked what you use as a camera.
Yeah, Canon 5D is what I've used for quite a few years, and 5D Mark II. I mentioned that it's full frame, so it doesn't crop in, so you have more pixels to work with. I love it a lot, and I use a ring flash.
Okay. Another question from Graham. He asks if you're familiar with Cades Cove, which you did mention. Yep. He says he went there as a teen in the 60s and found it incredibly lush and beautiful.
Yeah, Cades Cove, and there's horse fields there and barns and stuff. I'm not sure if they're privately owned or not. I don't think so. I think National Park runs it. So again, it's a national park. It's not just wilderness, but also historical. So did I repeat questions properly? I've been forgetting to do that. Okay. Have to repeat the questions for the online people. Any more questions, comments? I'm all yours for now. Okay.
So thank you.
Okay,
so
welcome.
Much.
It's a pleasure.
Transported us to spring.
Yeah.
It sounds like because you live here, you belong to us. So I think you should start doing some trails and things for us for the field mats too.
Oh yeah.
You have sick John on you.
Okay. I like leading outings. I do it for the field botanists, but I tend to be pretty picky of my time because I'm extraordinarily busy with my business. But I enjoy leading walks. But I usually don't plan far ahead. Yeah. So, because I'm busy, so that's why. Yeah. So anyways, John can pester me.
Well, thank you so much, sir, for being with us.
You're welcome. Thank you. I saw somebody had their hand up. I run an IT consulting, specialized IT. So I work with particular accounting softwares, databases. I do custom programming related to those. And that kind of thing. So I sell, supply, implement, configure accounting software for small business, and then write custom software that enhances that or interacts with other software and so on. I'm also a certified accountant, but I only do that in relation to the accounting software. So solve issues for them or solve accounting issues and that kind of thing. So keeps me pretty busy. Most of the clients are in GTA, Hamilton, Burlington area, but I have clients all over the country. So been doing it for about 35 years. Yeah, so a lot of work with databases. So I helped out some extent with a plant list. I was going to do that, but then I found myself too short on time and had to pass that project on to the able hands of Tyler Miller. And then we've worked together a bit. I helped him get the initial data out of the old Word Perfect document into Excel for him. So, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Almost there. We should be able to have the vascular plant list to the printers and the out. Pretty much we'll launch it in the spring, but we're planning